Hey, this is Dirk Nowitzki, and you're listening to the Mavs Step Back podcast.
I like this, TK. I like that. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk get the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, it get tragic. Luka with the ball, yeah, it get nasty. He'll drop 30, don't gotta ask him.
Luka with the step back three. Oh, yeah! Porzingis three-pointer, yes, sir. Taking the three after the pump fake, and it's money for Porzingis.
Now you got my boy Chris Stabs, looking like Dirk and Nash in the gap. They just want a ring, wanna fill the gap on your team head. I ain't talking hats, dang, go relax. Still at the champs, defense still coming with the cannabis flow. The man's the best on the flow.
How's it going, y'all? Welcome into another edition of the Mavs Step Back podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined, as always, by my SI Dallas basketball colleague, Matt Galatson. It's been a while since we've done this. We've had a lot going on. Matt and I have been super busy, but we've been keeping up with everything Mavs-related, everything going on. And Matt, they got a huge win against the Milwaukee Bucks. And, I mean, I'd like to say I was, surprised that they got that win, especially with Luka not playing in the game. But, I mean, I kind of saw it coming. The Bucks, they were on an 18-game win streak. They were playing the Lakers next. So I've kind of felt they'd be looking forward to that one a little bit. The Mavs, without Luka, most people weren't giving them a chance, and I think they took that personally. I'm not shocked by it. I thought it would, end up being a great win for them, and definitely strengthening the way people look at Rick Carlisle this year. But what's your initial thoughts on that huge win over the Bucks on the road last night?
It was a KP coming out party for one.
Oh yeah,
I was really impressed with the way he played, especially in the fourth quarter with those two big threes from the antlers at midcourt.
Yeah.
He had that big. He didn't get the rebound on that free throw near the end of the game, but he got the huge block and hit it off of the Bucks player out of bounds, and it ended up being Mavs ball, and that basically ended the game. So right. I thought that was huge as well, and it's nice. It's nice to see them get a win against a good team without Luka. I think they probably should have won the Miami game. But
absolutely,
they were just a little shell shocked after, their big gun went down, and it took them a little while to get back together. But it was a good win. It was a really good win, and Seth played out of his mind as well. 26 points, I believe, in 26 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, 26 points in 26 minutes.
Yeah, so huge win all around. Especially, that's probably the hardest game they're going to have over this 5-game stretch, which is just absolutely brutal. So it was nice to get one right there when a lot of people were picking them. I know you were on Twitter, and the replies to that tweet were delicious.
Yeah. It's always nice to go back and see some of those. Like, what planet are you from? And basically everybody telling you how dumb you are for having that opinion. So that felt nice. I'm not gonna lie. Oh
yeah. I'm sure it's always nice to be right when the Twitter sphere is calling you out.
But I mean, that was a big win, and again, to do it without Luka, the best team, arguably the best team in the NBA, definitely the best team in the East. They had won 18 straight games, and just to do it that way, and like you said, it was a coming out party for KP, who has just been, ever since Mexico City, he's just been a different player, in my opinion. He's more aggressive. He had a really, really impressive putback dunk over Giannis in that win, too. And, I mean, that to me, that was just as impressive as those logo three-pointers he hit over Giannis late in that game too. But you had a big game from him. He's rounding into form. If he can keep that up once Luka comes back, I mean, I don't know how. I don't know what the ceiling of this team looks like. It's really kind of scary to think about because, I mean, they've already got the number one offense, and they showed you in that last
NBA
game.
history.
I mean, yeah, like if the season ended today, historically, by the numbers, they would have the best offense in NBA history. So, and they've done that so far without KP, doing what he's done these last few games. So if he can get it clicking with Luka together, I mean, I just don't know what that looks like. I mean, obviously it's good for the Mavs, it's good for us, but I mean, I'm just trying to visualize what that is going to look like. I guess it looks like beating everybody by 20 points on most nights or something like that. But I don't know. We'll see.
I think some of these things are going to start to come back down to earth a little bit, but for the most part, I think you're right. It's hard to measure.
I don't know how much more you can really come down to earth with it, because I mean the Mavs have played enough games now, and they've been so consistent, with the offense, and the chemistry has just gotten stronger and stronger. And at first it was like, okay, well, they haven't really played that hard of a schedule, but now you look at the schedule, you look what they've done so far. They've got road wins at Denver. They've got another, road wins at Denver, at Houston, at Phoenix, which at the time was more impressive than it is now. They're kind of reeling a little bit. At the Lakers, where they won by 14, but that score didn't truly show how bad they beat the Lakers on their home floor. And now they beat the Bucks and snap their 18-game win streak. Those are really impressive. You don't just luck into those road wins. And they've been, if you go back and you look at that Knicks loss, that last Knicks loss, ever since then, the Mavs have gone 12-3. And 2 of those 3 losses have been by 4 points. It's the Kings and the Miami loss in overtime. And you could argue that they should have won both of those games. And so really the only loss in this 15-game stretch since that disappointing New York loss came against the Clippers, who, basically had everybody healthy that night. They were out to prove a point, and they pretty much smothered Luka all night, and they won by 15. But other than that, ever since that Knicks loss, they've been pretty much unstoppable. And, I don't know. I don't think it's going to slow down. That's why I keep saying when KP finally becomes more consistent and he does what we've seen lately, on a nightly basis, I really just, I don't know. I don't want to come off as being, a homer, too optimistic about it. But Matt, look at the numbers. Look what they've done. Look. I know. I know it's impossible for me to not come off that way, but you look what they've done so far in the season, and you look at all the numbers of their offense and, just individually what these guys are doing. Seth Curry, he hadn't even been shooting that well compared to what he has done throughout his career up until, the last couple of games. And, so to me,
Dalton.
They're sitting at third in the West, and they still haven't reached their full potential on offense. So, I think
I don't disagree with anything
I think they're
you're
a
saying.
contender now.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. What I was talking about before you went on to filibuster about how the Mavericks are the best team in the history of ever is I think was just the offense being, the best offense, and historically the best offense, whatever. I think that's going to regress towards the mean a little bit. That doesn't mean they're going to drop off and fall into the back half of the Western Conference. I just think that the numbers that they're putting up offensively are going to level off a little bit. I don't think Tim Hardaway Jr. is capable of sustaining what he's been doing the last 10 games or so throughout the entire regular season. But, that also could mean that other players are going to step up. Like KP still needs to reach his full potential. Seth has been coming on the last couple games, so maybe it just gets replaced in other ways. I don't know. I still think the team needs to make a trade to solidify everything. Maybe not necessarily in the starting lineup, but something on the bench to give them a little bit more punch. I'm not really sure what that looks like right now. We have a couple of ideas.
See,
But I don't think they're a finished product, and that's not bad. That means that the things that they can trade to make the team better aren't things that are going to really change the dynamic of what they're doing.
See, I don't even really think they need to. To me, it would be about adding a guy that can. I mean, he doesn't have to just provide a spark off the bench, because the Mavs have arguably the best bench in the NBA right now. So, and it's always a different guy contributing. So, like you said, Tim Hardaway Jr., you don't expect him to, put up 29 points like he did against the Kings, or 28 points against Miami. But he's a streaky player. So on the nights that he's not going to do it, like I have to look at the box score. What did he have in that Milwaukee game? Let me pull it up here real quick.
He went 1 for 10 from the floor and had 6 points or something.
Okay, so see, like that. But then you have Jalen Brunson, who scores 13 and has 11 assists. So and then you have Seth Curry going for 26. It's always somebody different. Everybody's taking turns stepping up. So I don't know, Matt. I was with you. I'm kind of like you. I still feel like they're probably one more piece. I can't pinpoint what the perfect piece is.
Well, I think we both know what it is.
It's probably Bogdan Bogdanovic from Sacramento.
And for once, people give me shit all the time because, I always talk about how I want, Goran Dragic and Bogdan Bogdanovic and one of the Hernan Gomez's, because I think Luka playing with people that he's comfortable with and gets along well with is a good thing.
Well,
but for once, this has nothing to do with that.
Right.
This is
he's just good.
A player who's he's really good. He's exactly what they need, and he's in a situation where he's I don't want to say easily attainable, but the possibility is there where the Kings could just be like, well, okay, whatever. The season isn't going how we want. Let's just go ahead and do this and get a couple of assets and regroup, and we'll come back at this thing next year when our players have another year of experience. So it's more based on reality than it really has ever been, and he kind of fits.
He
really well.
He does. Especially, I remember the other night, I think he put up 25, 5 and 5 for the Kings. And some of the stuff he was doing, I was thinking to myself, man, imagine if we had this dude while Luka's rehabbing, from his sprained ankle. He would fit perfect, because they're not the same player by any means. Luka's a whole lot stronger. He has better court vision. He's a better finisher at the rim and everything. But I was watching Bogdanovic play, and I'm just like, he's kind of like a Luka light. And it would really, it'd make it easier for the Mavs to be as cautious as possible. And even if Luka's ready to go, but they don't, they think he should take a few more games off, having a guy like Bogdanovic would make it easier to be like, okay, just, take all the time you need, don't rush it. Which, if the Mavs do like they did in Milwaukee, it might already be like that. And see, that'll bring me back to my other point I was going to make. I'm like you right now. I think they still need to make that one more move to solidify their contender status. And I really think Bogdanovic would be, the answer for them. I don't know how possible that is. I don't know what Sacramento would want. I do know they have already, given Harrison Barnes a ton of money. They just gave Buddy Hield a ton of money. So with Bogdanovic being a restricted free agent this upcoming summer, unless they're planning to, break the bank to keep him, it would make more sense for them to trade him before the February deadline and get something for him before, they get to this summer. Somebody offers him a huge offer sheet, and then they end up letting him walk for nothing. So I don't know what their front office's thinking is right now, but I'm just saying, unless they're planning to pay him big money, they probably need to go ahead and, get something for him while they can before the deadline. And, maybe the Mavs and Kings, they have some recent history they're making trades, so there's some familiarity there. I don't necessarily know if the Mavs have what it takes to get Bogdanovic, because I feel like some other teams might have, a better package to offer, but you could have said the same thing about Kristaps Porzingis coming to Dallas last year, with other teams having a better package to offer. So you never know. You never want to underestimate our, friend of the podcast, Donnie Nelson. He can never underestimate that guy.
No, I mean, and KP was a much more high-profile, seemingly much more, difficult to attain player than Bogdanovic. I mean,
and wait, but before you say this, I just realized that I got so caught up talking about Bogdanovic, I didn't even finish my point. But yes, I do think they need to add another piece right now. But with every big win that keeps coming, especially like what we saw in Milwaukee, stuff like that makes me kind of second guess, like, okay, do we need to mess with this chemistry? Because it's not like the 2014 team before they traded for Rondo. That team was good too. They had almost the identical record that the Mavs have this year. The problem with that team was it was all offense and no defense. And, this year's Mavs team isn't great defensively, but they're like middle of the pack. And we've seen some good defensive moments from them. It wasn't that way in 2014 before they traded for Rondo. That was one of the main reasons they made the trade, was because they couldn't beat the bigger teams they were facing. And, they were basically just beating up on the lesser teams with their high-powered offense. So that's my thing. I don't want to risk ruining the chemistry that they have now, given the big wins that they've been able to rattle off. At least not yet. I do think they need to wait a little bit closer to the deadline.
My thing is, I think you can always get better. There's always one more step you can take to get better. And I think that, this team has a few warts that just they've been able to get over in these wins, especially, against Miami. You saw a few of those things. I know the whole Luka thing was a big deal, but, I don't think Jalen Brunson's really ready to take on a big role. Like, he just, his tunnel vision is something that really hurts them in key moments, and it killed them against Miami. It wasn't as bad against Milwaukee, but there was still times there where you're just like, okay, man, let's go. You have to admit, there's always ways for you to get better. And I know they're playing really well, and it's difficult to imagine breaking up chemistry to do something to make the team better. But the thing that I'm talking about doing to get a player like Bogdanovic, you don't really break up that much chemistry. I mean, yeah, Jalen, maybe that could hurt it a little bit, but the other things is like it's like Courtney Lee in the Warriors pick, and maybe something like Justin Jackson. Like I mean, not going back to the Kings, but I mean, there's players who aren't really playing a lot of minutes right now that you can throw into a deal like that. It's not going to upset the chemistry. And especially if you bring a guy like Bogdanovic in who already has such good chemistry with Luka,
right?
We're not talking about bringing Rondo in here. We're talking about bringing somebody that we know the star player is going to get along with, that KP probably already gets along with.
And I feel like we should clarify this because I'm sure some people, judging by Mavs Twitter and how everybody feels about Brunson right now, they might take that the wrong way, what you're saying about him. We're on the same page here. Jalen Brunson is a good basketball player. He's how can I put this?
He's better than Dennis Smith Jr. He's better than a lot of backup point guards in the NBA, but he's inexperienced, and he's not a bad player. I like what he can be and what he's shown he can be, but you need to leverage that into something that can help you more now.
Right. If something is there, I'm not they don't need to press, but if something is there and they're able to take advantage of it, they definitely should. As much as I like Jalen Brunson, as much, potential I think he might have going forward, he's never going to be your starting point guard permanently. That's always going to be Luka now. And as much as I like Jalen Brunson, I don't think the Mavs can treat him the same way they did, Roddy Beaubois.
God.
He was considered untouchable at one point. And I mean, in hindsight, that was just ridiculous because I think they had some really good trade offers for him at the time. So you don't want to miss out on an opportunity to improve your team even more just because you like a guy.
I'll put it this way. If the Thunder can trade James Harden and the Knicks can trade Kristaps Porzingis and any other NBA team can trade a star or a young star who hasn't even developed into anything quite yet, then the Mavericks could trade Jalen Brunson. He's not a superstar. He's not an all-star, at least not yet. So trade for a player that helps you more now and helps get you over the hump that you might already be over, but you want to make sure you're all the way over heading into May and in June. And just bite the bullet and do it. You have to take risks to gain. You have to spend money to make money. You have to take risks for big gains. And that's what they have to do.
Again, I love Brunson.
I do too.
What he's been able to do so far. But I will say this. If something happens and they do have to part with him, it better be for a wing player that can also handle the ball.
Yes. I don't want them to trade Jalen Brunson for, Kyle Korver. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about trading for a player that can make a big difference.
Well, and look, like I said, we've got a long way to go until the trade deadline. So there's going to be so much speculation over the next few
Tomorrow
months.
morning on Twitter, it's going to come out. The Step Back Podcast hates Jalen Brunson. It's ridiculous. All they do is talk shit about Jalen Brunson. That's not what we're saying.
No,
okay?
No, that's absolutely not what we're saying. But you're right. There's probably going to be a couple of those takes. But anyway, so we have so much ahead of us as far as trade speculation. We don't want to, just beat this thing in the ground. But like I said, with every passing game, with every big win that they have, it's like, okay, maybe this is sustainable. With every passing week that they stay in the top 3 in the West, it's like, okay, well, when are they going to come back down? And they don't. They're still right there. So, it just makes you think that, okay, maybe this is real. and maybe we just don't have to do anything. Now, if an opportunity comes up, like we said, they need to take advantage of it. But right now they're in just a great situation. They've got, I mean, if they want to make a big trade or even like a moderate trade, they have the assets to do it because they have such good contracts on their roster. And I mean, it's a great situation all around. They're good. They've got a good record. They're high in the standings. Luka's an MVP candidate. KP, he's just now starting to round into form and, play like a $158 million player again. Again, like he's made that much money beforehand, but you know what I mean. He was an all-star before his injury.
Yes, he was well worth that money before he got injured.
Yeah. So, he's coming back and playing like the unicorn again. He's 24. Luka's 20. The roster in general is, fairly young. I mean, it's a great situation. It's a great time to be a Mavs fan, Mavs media, being able to cover this team. It's a whole lot of fun.
I just want to point one thing out before we get too lost on this whole KP resurgence thing or going in another direction. I just want all of our listeners to know that back on December 1st, I think it might have actually been November 30th, but anyway, one Dalton Trigg sent a message to me and our friend Kirk Henderson on Twitter that read, "I hope the Mavs didn't mess up by giving KP a full max."
Well,
I mean, it doesn't look like they did now, does it?
Okay, so what was your point? What was your point in doing this just now? Because now I'm going to
because I rarely screenshot things, but this one I wanted for KP to start playing well, and this isn't directly aimed at you, but like a lot of people.
Hey guys, I just went and screenshotted one of Dalton's direct messages on Twitter and called him out on his own podcast, but it's not directed at you, Dalton.
Well, no, I mean my point overall is that there was a lot of people who were starting to say really ridiculous things about KP over the last few weeks and really starting to doubt him, and I kept saying he'll be fine, just let it play out, he'll get his legs back under him. In a metaphorical sense, he didn't lose anything in his legs, which some people have been saying, but it's finally starting to come through, and man, he's starting to look almost like, especially in the Milwaukee game and the Miami game, in the second half of that game, he really is starting to look like the player he was in New York. He really is, and that's scary, man.
I'm trying to go back and see what game that would have been. He must have had a really bad game for me to say that.
Well, okay, I brought up your message, but my point really is aimed overall at this whole.
Well, I mean,
KP
obviously, I get your overall point, but my mind is now focused on how bad KP played that night for me to say it.
Okay,
you're gonna have to go and post this now to prove it to everybody.
It was, let's see.
I mean, was it the Phoenix game? Maybe. I mean, they won in Phoenix, but
it was the Phoenix game. It was the Phoenix game.
Here. Let's see. KP, yeah. Okay, so in the win over Phoenix, 120-113, KP in 34 minutes went 0 of 8 from the field, 0 of 6 from 3. And had 2 points.
Yes, that was the game.
Okay.
And my thought process behind this was, okay, Dalton just said something super irrational. Because obviously he's hurting and he's very invested in this and we're all frustrated. So I'm just going to screenshot this so he can see how far KP has come.
Well, see, there's a reason it gets said in DMs and not on the timeline, because you know how people, they fan police these days.
Okay, yes.
So
I also screenshotted something that Kirk said the other day. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but
oh God.
he'll get.
Well, now I got to know.
He'll get. I'll tell you off air, but he'll get his if it pans out.
Well, okay. Well, moving on from that, that was that was unexpected. I got ambushed on my own podcast. Okay, here we go.
And by the way, I fully expect you to do it to me one day. So let's move on. And Rick Carlisle, I mean, what do you think? Coach of the Year leader? I think he has a really good damn case. And you and I were talking before we started recording, and it's kind of hard to see anybody else who's done a better job this year. I mean, you could talk about Eric Spoelstra in Miami. That's a really good one. Nick Nurse has done a hell of a job in Toronto. But, I mean, none of them have the best offense in NBA history through 26 games. With the superstar engine, straw that stirs the drink being a 20-year-old kid. So,
well, I mean, it's not even just that for me. It's like, yeah, Nick Nurse, Eric Spoelstra, those guys should definitely be considered. I mean, even Billy Donovan with OKC. I mean, he's not going to win it, but he should at least get a little bit of love because, right now OKC, everybody marked them off, and they're sitting in the 8th seed in the West. So, even a guy like that should get some love. But, I mean, again, you just look at the standings, and you have to at least take preseason predictions into some consideration because pretty much everybody was saying, okay, the Mavs might make it as an 8 seed in the playoffs, but, ultimately they might fall short, being that 9th, 10th spot in the West. And then you look at the standings, and they're 10 games over 500. They're third. They're only a game behind the Clippers for second in the West. I mean, I don't see how Rick Carlisle isn't the runaway coach of the year right now.
Well, Dalton, they're on pace to win 57 games. Right.
and I think the best projection for them, in the offseason from like a major like 538, I think their best projection was like 44 wins?
Yeah.
44 wins.
They probably won't win 57. But it seems to me they're going to be right there at 50.
Right, yeah.
Which, if they hit 50, that's a 17 game improvement from last season. That is insane.
Right. I mean, yeah, to me, if the Mavs even just looking at the standings, they are, let me see. They are 6 games up on the 8 seed in the loss column. And they are a good 3 full games ahead of Utah, which is at the 6th spot. I mean, right now, that's a pretty big cushion for this far in the season. Obviously, it can change. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. We saw that, here recently with Luka. You never know. But, I mean, the team looks like it's good enough to withstand something like that now. That was one of the big questions before the season. We were like, man, if something happens to Luka or KP, the Mavs might be screwed. But you see what they've been able to do now, and it's like, okay, well, they can withstand a minor injury here or there.
Well, there was a point early in the season when I was having some doubt, and it was early in the season. And maybe this is the thing you can call me out for that I said earlier in the season. And it's right when
when
I
things... can't even. I'm not even going to take up time doing it because I thought about it. I was like vigorously going through my phone a while ago, like, oh, I'm going to find something that Matt said. And I said, you know what? No, I'm just going to wait until the next game that Jalen Brunson has an off game or something. I'll wait for a fresh one.
Okay, well, this is a really bad take that I had, and it was built out of frustration, but it was at a point where I was having a little doubt about Rick Carlisle. I've never really doubted Rick Carlisle until, there was a point in this season, and it was the second loss to the Knicks. And I sent you a message that said, David Fizdale is a better coach than Rick Carlisle.
Oh! Yeah, okay, that's a bad one.
That was a really bad one. But ever since that point, it's like that second Knicks loss kind of flipped a switch in them. Or maybe it just flipped a switch in Rick, and he, was like, you know what, this is enough's enough. I have to make some changes, and whatever he did, it worked. And they've lost 2 games since then, right?
3 games.
3 games?
2 of them, the Kings and the Miami overtime loss were each by 4 points. And then the other one was the 15-point loss to the Clippers.
Okay, so whatever he did, it worked. And they've been arguably, outside of the Bucks, who they just beat, the best team in the NBA over that stretch.
Well, I mean, it's some of the stuff we were talking about, after that. Well, after the first Knicks loss and even the second one. I mean, it's some of the stuff that we were seeing, and obviously, we're not the coach, and we're not as smart as Rick Carlisle is, but it was just little things we were seeing that could help this team, like lineup continuity, and we've seen that here lately. They've had the same starting lineup up until Luka got hurt for I don't know how many straight games. I mean, it pretty much this stretch since that Knicks loss, they've basically had the same starting lineup, and they've built a lot of chemistry, and it's just little things like that. It's playing Seth Curry more. Rick went through that weird stretch where Courtney Lee started 3 games at the beginning of the season and only played like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so the Mavericks were 6-5 after the second loss to the Knicks.
Yep.
And that was their second loss in a row. That was probably their worst stretch of the season. They lost to the Knicks, beat the Grizzlies, and then played 2 really bad games in a row against Boston and New York. Since then, they're 12-3, and they've beaten Toronto, Houston, the Lakers, and now the Bucks. So, I mean,
yeah,
it speaks for itself.
The most impressive thing to me is that road loss. They lost to the Celtics, and then they lost that second time to the Knicks. That's the only time all season that they've lost 2 consecutive games. And before the season started, that was one of my biggest things for why I was so optimistic about this team. On paper, they might not be the most talented roster as far as having big names and everything, but they were deep enough, they were good enough to where I didn't see them, going through long stretches of losses like they did last year. Because I remember last year, before we even got to Christmas and New Year's, the Mavs had already gone through 2 separate stretches of 6-game losing streaks, which was brutal. So it's just night and day difference from last year to this year. And I really do think Rick Carlisle, he just finally decided to trust a starting lineup. He decided to, I don't know, he wasn't trying to be as complicated with it. He got back to being a little bit more simple, and it's worked out. I mean, he's pushed all the right buttons when he's had to. Breaking the emergency glass for JJ Barea every now and then.
And not overdoing it, which is key.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something else we talked about. We were talking about JJ earlier in the season, and we were both fine with him playing this year, but we just didn't want it to be a situation where, they have to hit the emergency glass for JJ Barea to come in and provide a spark, and then it takes away from Curry or Brunson's minutes, something like that. So, and I mean, to his credit, that hasn't happened yet. So that's been great. I mean, he's done such a good job this year. It's finally, you almost forget, after 3 straight years of the Mavs missing the playoffs and having a losing record, I mean, you almost started to forget how Rick Carlisle looked with, some actual weapons to play with. And he is back. I mean, he's back, and it is great to see. He's having fun. The guys are having fun. And, I mean, the proof is right there in their record. So, I think it's just going to be, it's going to keep getting better throughout this season. And I'm like you. I think they're going to get close to 50 wins. And if that does happen, I think he's definitely going to end up being the coach of the year. But before we completely move on, we got off of it for a little bit, but before we completely move on from that Bucks game, I mean, even in the loss, Giannis Antetokounmpo was absolutely just dominant. 48 points. He had that stretch at the end where I really thought that he was going to bring the Bucks back from I think they were down 13, 14 points with like a minute and 30 seconds left, and they still almost came back and tied it.
Man, he is a freak. I know, I know it's Giannis, but like I feel like they scored I think, 17 points or 18 points in like a minute and a half. And this just because they gave the ball to Giannis, and he just barrel rolled through the defense and scored. And it was like a 2-second, they literally had the ball for 5 seconds, and he'd just be like, "Get the hell out of my way," and he'd score. And then they go back down and foul. I mean, I was like, oh my god, they're gonna lose this game because Giannis cannot be stopped.
And I mean, to be fair, it wasn't all Giannis. The Mavs helped him out a little bit by missing some key free throws down the stretch too. But after, whether it was off a missed free throw or they were just inbounding, Giannis was in a full sprint and they were passing it to him, and Maxi was backpedaling. By the time Maxi gets to half court, Giannis is pretty much already there, and you're just thinking, oh no, oh no, this isn't going to end well.
There was one play where he went in between 2 guys and was like, okay, they're just going to, they're going to block him off here, or they're going to wrap him up or something, and he just slipped through like fucking, I don't know what it was. He slipped through and
like he's
got
not
a layup.
He's not a massive freak of nature.
It was like a gymnast. It's like he went completely flat and went in between this tiny space in between Maxi and I think it was KP. It might have been Dwight, but I can't remember exactly because it was all.
It wasn't KP because I think as much as we've praised Rick, I think he took KP out a little too early in that game.
Yeah, maybe, but whatever the case, I was just like, what even is that? How does a person that size do that? And he had I think Mark Follow City had 37 points with like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, and he ended the game with 48. Yeah.
It's unreal. And look, even though Giannis scored 48, and I mean, like you said, he's unreal. I mean, it just makes you, if the Mavs don't make a trade, or if they just, I know we don't like to put all of our eggs into, future free agency wishing and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, if there's a guy that you are going to do that for, it would be Giannis, because, he's even voiced his opinion that, the Bucks' success from now until then could play a factor in his decision. And I mean, I don't know, Matt. I'm not going to get too far off into this, but I'm just saying if there was ever a time for the Mavs to catch a break in free agency and sign a guy of that magnitude, I know you're going to side this, and we had Will Kane on, and he said he didn't want to think about it either, but seeing how good the Mavs are now and knowing how good of a relationship, Donnie Nelson has with him after recruiting, or not recruiting, but you know what I mean. He scouted him all those years. I could see it happening. He's like the only
2 summers away.
It is, but I can see the groundwork being laid for that now. And you can call me crazy or whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's gonna be, a pretty good possibility that they throw all of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a pretty good possibility they're gonna put all their eggs in the Giannis basket in 2021. And you can't blame them for doing it either. And they're still probably going to be a good team.
Well, of course not. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people are against the Mavs making some big deal for a trade is, don't mess up the money for Giannis. It's like, well, we've kind of learned that cap space isn't everything. Look at what the Miami Heat did to get Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, cap space is officially a myth.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't matter. If you want to make a trade, you make a trade. And
now that doesn't mean go trade for Chris Paul's contract or some dumb.
No, but it also means
like
that you can still be aggressive, and there's ways to get out of it. That said, I can't bring myself to think about something that's 2 summers away. I'll drive myself crazy.
Well, that's why I'm here, so I can do that for us. Because I've already got, I've got my bowl out. I've got my little whisk. I've started baking the Giannis cake. It's about to go in the oven. It's going to come out in 2 years. But anyway.
Sure.
So look, and Giannis is great. He scared the daylights out of us. We thought he was going to bring the Bucks all the way back and win that game. But the Mavs, they held him off. And even though Giannis had 48 points, I don't think – that just doesn't tell the story of how good of, defense Maxi Kleber played on him throughout the night. Because I don't know, man. Maxi just seems like the perfect type of player that you would want to put on him. On Giannis, because he's tall, he's strong, he's athletic. He's quick enough to step in front and maybe not block the shot, but contest it enough to make Giannis miss.
He called Ilyasova which I really like.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back and see. I heard you talking about that. That's about the time that my TV went out because of the Mississippi tornado weather, which I came out of fine, by the way. But
thank God.
But I don't know. He's just the Bucks got smart and started, switching things up to where Giannis had a little bit more of a crease. They'd set screens and stuff, and the Mavs didn't respond to it correctly, and he got some easy buckets. But one-on-one, I was really impressed by what Maxi did. And, Maxi's not putting up huge numbers this year, but, he is a crucial part to this team. And that Donnie Nelson was scouting him since he was 16 in the same town that Dirk came from. It's just incredible that they were able to find this guy and that he's turned into the player that he has for them.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Maxi, for the last couple of years. I didn't think he'd turn into this much of a defensive stalwart, really. He's their best.
Right.
I think he's their best defender all around it. And Dorian's fine, but I think Maxi does the most for them on that end. And that's one of the more, I think, savvy moves they made this summer. We all kind of crapped on them for the summer they had at the time, and one of the more important deals they made was signing Maxi to an extension.
Yeah,
keeping him around is going to be big.
They kept their own guys on some really team-friendly deals. Not just Maxi, but Dorian Finney-Smith, who's played a big part this season. I think, what did they give Finney-Smith? Wasn't it like 4 years, $12 million or something ridiculous like that?
I can't remember off the top of my head,
or 3 years, $12 million. Either way, it's ridiculous.
all of the deals they did to bring back their own players, with the exception of KP, who got the max. Obviously, that doesn't really count. They were all team friendly, and they're all tradable.
Right. And the biggest thing with Maxi is, going into this season, we all knew, what kind of shot blocker he was. And it seems like every year he gets more and more athletic. He gets stronger. He's able to stay in front of guys. Not just a shot blocker, but he's just physical with other players. But the biggest thing to me is his three-point percentage, because his first year it was 31% on about 2 attempts per game. Then last year it was 35% on 3 attempts per game. And then this year he's shooting nearly 4 a game at a 38% clip. And that is huge. That is huge for this team, because you have a guy Maxi's size doing the dirty work on the defensive end, and then he's coming back on the other end and shooting 38% from 3. That just gives you a huge lift. So, I'm not going to talk on it too much. I'm going to let it end there, but I just don't think it can be understated how important he's been for this team. And talking about things being important, obviously the Luka injury is something that we've been keeping our eye on. Supposedly it wasn't as bad as it initially looked, which
it looked bad.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, it looked like his leg just kind of snapped, but thank goodness it wasn't near as bad as what we thought. When he went down, he was grabbing it high, and typically that's a bad sign, but it was just I believe what they say, it was a grade 2 ankle sprain, something like that.
I didn't see the grade, but
maybe it was moderate. I don't know what grade it is, but anyway, moderate ankle sprain. Could miss up to 2 weeks, but Rick Carlisle, he said that he's definitely going to miss the Boston Celtics game tomorrow, and then he said, there might be another update tomorrow, but he doesn't know. So, in my opinion, I don't think he's going to miss 2 weeks. Let me look at the schedule here. Because, if you remember the night of that Miami game, the report came out afterwards that Luka was already on he was already with the trainers working out on the underwater treadmill after that happened. So, that's pretty incredible. Let me see here.
Well, athletes just heal different than the rest of us normal folk. It's, the beatings and stress that they put on their bodies.
Well, especially the superstar athletes too.
They're just on another level, and
yeah.
If say we were playing a pickup game and something like that happened to us, we'd be in bed for a month probably.
Let's see. Okay, so the Miami game was Saturday. It wouldn't shock me if Luka came back for the 76ers game this Friday. I'm not real confident in that. I think it'll, I think it's probably safer to say he'll come back against the San Antonio game the day after Christmas. Just looking at the spacing between all these, but I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me if he ended up playing in that Philadelphia game. So we'll see. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not gonna try and put a definite thing on it. I don't think it's gonna take 2 weeks. But maybe they'll err on the cautious side if they keep winning like they did last night against the Bucks, and let's say they come out of this stretch 3-2.
That'd be amazing.
Who knows? But I don't think they're going to rush anything. Although it wouldn't hurt to err on the cautious side, just because if he turns that ankle again, then that could be a bigger problem. But we'll see. I think they'll be okay. Even if it does take the full 2 weeks or wherever it is, I think they'll be okay. Based on what they did last night, I think they can survive this stretch without him.
Well, and I mean, again, like I said earlier, with Luka playing at the level that he's been playing at, and then him being out, there's a lot of people that were counting this team out, especially with the schedule they had ahead of them. Because I mean, you had Miami. Luka got injured in the very beginning of that game, and they got down early. They fought back. They probably should have won that game, but didn't because of some pretty bad plays down the stretch. Then they turn around and play the best team in the East at their place on an 18-game win streak, and they beat them. And, they only beat them by 4, but, I mean, it was really it was really more than that before that weird last minute and a half of that game. And now they're going to play Boston at home, and this will be our last point we touch on here before we head out, but they play the Boston Celtics at home. They lost to them in Boston by 10 points, 116-106. And, that game was...
That was one of the worst games they played all year.
Yeah, it wasn't good. They had moments in that game where they kept it close, but for the most part, it was one of their worst shooting games of the year. So they owe the Celtics one for what happened in the last one. I saw that Marcus Smart didn't make the trip. So that tells me it could potentially be another big game for KP, because I remember Marcus Smart was just he frustrated Porzingis a lot in that first matchup. So he doesn't have to worry about Marcus Smart this time around. And we don't have to worry about Marcus Smart hitting 7 of 8 threes.
That would never happen again in the rest of his life.
Well, that's not an exact number. I'm just over-exaggerating. I just feel like every time Marcus Smart plays against the Mavs, he's one of those versus...
It's a hometown thing.
Yeah, he's one of those versus Mavs all-stars. Yeah. Marcus Smart is a good player. He's a good NBA player, but I just feel like when he plays the Mavs, he takes it up a couple notches. But I don't know. I can see them winning that. I think at Philadelphia is going to be pretty hard just because of the matchup. If Luka doesn't play, I think that, I don't know, which, you could have said the same exact thing about the Bucks game, but I think they can beat the Celtics. I think they can beat the Raptors. And then after that Raptors game, you've got the Spurs and the Warriors before ending the year with the Lakers and the Thunder. So, it seemed daunting at first, but after what they did to the Bucks and how they fought back against the Heat, it makes you feel a whole lot better about it. And I don't know. What are you looking forward for in this upcoming Celtics game? Because and let me say this before you answer that too, because it's one of these things where the Mavs, they're coming off a really emotional high from what they did in Milwaukee. And then you've got the Celtics, who have basically had an early All-Star break. By the time they play tomorrow night, they will have been off for 5 days, which is like one of the weirdest regular season schedule quirks I think I've ever seen. I don't know if they're gonna come out with low energy or rusty or something because they haven't played in a while, or maybe the Mavs are will they continue their hot streak, or will they have kind of a hangover type of game? What should we expect?
I want to see how Tim Hardaway Jr. bounces back after the Milwaukee game. He's been really integral in this whole run. So I want to see if he can get back. I want to see if Seth Curry can sustain what he's been doing the last couple of games. Ever since Mexico City,
Man, he's
been great. Which, that's when the whole thing started for him in 2017. So maybe he can find that again and keep that going. And I want to see what KP does against Boston's defense, because they really did frustrate him last time. I know Marcus Smart won't be there, but these are the kinds of games, without Luka, they're going to need him to be what he was against Milwaukee. And I don't really care what Boston throws at them or not. I'm more concerned with what the Mavericks are going to do.
Yeah.
Those things are very important.
One last thing I want to touch on here, and it's about Seth Curry, because you talked about how hot he's been since Mexico City. For his career, he is a 43.5% three-point shooter. Last year with the Trailblazers, he shot 45%. And then the 2 years before that, 42.5 and 45% again. Well, up until that Mexico City game against Detroit, his three-point percentage this year was like around 37, I believe, 37, 38%. And in those, in these last 3 games, is that right? 3 games?
Detroit.
So in the last 3 games, Detroit, Miami, Milwaukee, he has been so good from the three-point line. He has raised that from like 37% to 41% in that stretch. I mean, he is just it's like he almost just can't miss right now. And you love to see what people have been saying. He's progressing to the mean. And for a guy that shot 45% from 3 last year, and he's almost 44% for his career, you have to imagine. I mean, that's going to keep going up a little bit. So,
well, yeah, his last 3 games, he's 10 of 19 from 3, so he's over 50% from 3 in his last 3 games. That's very good.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I mean, we said it before the season. He was going to be a big part, and especially playing with Luka. You're going to get a bunch of open looks, and even without Luka, like we saw in the Milwaukee game, and you've got Carlisle, calling the shots. I mean, they still had a bunch of wide open looks. It's almost like having Carlisle and Luka together as a cheat code. So, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm ready to get this thing going into the playoffs later. I don't want to count my. I don't want to get my cart ahead of the horse.
We're only 56 games away, Dalton.
Yeah, but I mean, what they've been doing so far, it seems sustainable.
No,
it's not like they're overexerting themselves. They're getting a lot of their shots are wide open.
I'm just saying, you're aching for the playoffs, and we've still got a good 4 or 5 months. So,
well, if we get to
patience, grasshopper.
If we get towards the end of January and we're getting close to the trade deadline, and they still have a 6-game cushion in the loss column on the 8 seed, I'm going to go ahead and guarantee that they're going to be in it.
That's great, man. I'll probably feel the same way. I just
I know. You don't want to.
I've been hurt. I've been hurt too many times, and
it's kind of like when there was like 2 minutes left in that Milwaukee game, and the Mavs were up. I think it was like 13 points, something like that, and I retweeted my own tweet from like the day or 2 prior to that, and I said that the Mavs, the Luka-less Mavs, were going to go into Milwaukee and end their 18-game streak strengthening Rick Carlisle's Coach of the Year candidate. And from the moment I retweeted that, that's when Milwaukee started to scare the crap out of us.
Well, it wasn't just you retweeting that, Dalton. It was me retweeting the replies in that tweet with snarky videos and GIFs and pictures.
Yeah, after we, I think I even went through and liked a lot of them too. Just kind of like, I see this comment here. And then I thought we were gonna have to eat our words there, but it didn't happen. They went into Milwaukee, got a huge win without Luka. It's one of those wins that can really, boost the morale even further for the rest of the guys. It tells them that, yeah, Luka's great. Luka's playing at an MVP level, but we're pretty dang good too. And I think it's just gonna, once Luka comes back, stuff like that can only help them going forward. So, guys, that's going to wrap it up for another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. Matt, before we take off here, is there anything you want to add?
Not really. Just go like and just share and rate and subscribe and all that good stuff. And go subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Dalton will tell you more about that, but
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, definitely. We're on pretty much every platform. Most of our listeners listen to us on Apple Podcasts, but we're on Spotify, Stitcher. You name it, we're there. And like Matt said, go to our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe there. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, one lucky winner will win 2 tickets to the Mavs home game of their choice. And there are so many good games left on this schedule, so be sure to do that. We're halfway there right now, so you still have a chance to enter, spread the word. Anybody with a phone that has a YouTube app, tell them to go on there and find us and subscribe to it. And, we don't care. We don't care. Go tell your parents to subscribe. You'll have a better chance of winning those tickets. So, do whatever you got to do. Get us to 1,000 subs there, and we will make sure that one lucky subscriber gets those tickets. And we'll be sure to do a little bit better job of updating that. The way we do those YouTube videos, and we put a nice graphic on there with a nice little sound wave and everything. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than usual, so those are a little bit delayed. But again, we don't have any ads or anything going on that, so it's always going to be a little bit more delayed than if you go subscribe on Apple Podcasts. But all right, guys, that's going to do it for another episode, and we hope you enjoy the Mavs Celtics game tomorrow and the rest of the week. We'll be back next week for a Christmas edition episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. Y'all have a good one.
A lot of times feel like I was on the road to nowhere. Tell me why all these people up in my face acting like I know them. Feeling like Luka Doncic, rookie of the year, I'm the coldest. God speaking through me every single track, prophet like Moses. Asking why I gotta wait till I'm dead to go and get my roses. Feeling like Mavs 2019, grinding unfocused. I used to go to bed at night discouraged, so hopeless. Went through the same pain, my friends chose drugs to cope with. Now I'm reading all these hating comments, man, it got me in motion. I had to whip up the potion, I ain't even with the boasting. I was just broken, way down to my lowest, getting swallowed by them locusts, letting God do the coaching. I had to go through a lot, just to realize that I'm chosen. Carry away, felt like boulders, all of those slams shut, had to bulldoze them. Name a rapper dude who can see me over wax. I'm just trying to spit the facts, way I spit my flow, people telling me relax. I just get it double back, They still asking for more and I gave them my last. Can't never seen it let go of the past. And that's sad, I just sit back and reflect. Oh my God, they really feeling the kid. Family calling on the phone, almost a star. June, look what you did. About to put Silk right back on the grid. Go kill a beat, then go listen to Trig. Turn on my phone and I listen to Matt. Headphones in, sit back with a grin. Making up a profit, I don't care about the profit. I'm just teaching like a prophet. I'm just preaching like a prophet. Staying tall like I'm Dodgers. Sleeping on me like pajamas. I'm just trying to fill up my wallet. But what you call it, profit trying to make a profit, Everybody wanna live lavish and ball, but got no clue what it costs. I done helped a lot of people, but when I'm down, I ain't got no one to call. Had to get up and throw my feelings in the trash. Man, my heart was getting mauled. Walking on this thin roadway to my goals. Man, they praying I fall off. And I ain't feel nothing but hate. Best rapper at the table and I ain't even ate. Still got the nerve to try to take my plate. But I'm a hero to these people and they ain't got a road to nowhere. Tell me why all these people up in my face acting like I know them. Feeling like Luka, Rookie of the Year, I'm the coldest. God speaking through me every single track, prophet like Moses. Asking why I gotta wait till I'm dead to go and get my roses. Feeling like Mavs 2019, grinding, I'm focused. I used to go to bed at night, discouraged, so hopeless. Went through the same pain, my friends chose drugs to cope with. Now reading all these hating comments, man, it got me rolling. Tell me why all these people up in my face acting like I know them. Feeling like Luka, Rookie of the Year, I'm the coldest. God speaking through me every single track, prophet like Moses. Asking why I gotta wait till I'm dead to go and get my roses. Feeling like Mavs 2019, grinding, I'm focused. I used to go to bed at night, discouraged, so hopeless. Went through the same pain, my friends chose drugs to cope with. Now reading all these hating comments.